The Darien is referred to as the stopper. In Panama, as in the rest of the world, tropical forests are shrinking. But there is one area which the nation's government is trying to preserve. On this journey, we'll head down to the southern Panamanian border, an area known as the Darien Gap. Not only is this jungle known for its large biodiversity, but what makes it most unique is that it functions as a barrier between North and South America.
We've been driving for about an hour from Panama City, and you can tell that the road is just getting narrower and narrower.
This is the Pan American Highway. It's around 16,000 miles long and goes from Alaska to the tip of South America. But a 50-mile stretch is missing, in the Darien Gap. The Darien is referred to as the stopper because it stops things such as immigrants, diseases, and drug trafficking-related violence from spreading into North America.
We're at a checkpoint right now, and we just got stopped. We're pulling over because they want to look at our passports. Gracias. He says if we head to the town of Yavisa, which is actually where we're going right now, basically if you go outside the parameters of security, it does get very dangerous. There's a lot of paramilitary and the guerrillas from Colombia, the FARC. He said they're definitely out there.
In Panama's southern neighbor, Colombia, government forces have been fighting left-wing guerrillas and right-wing paramilitaries, both of which earn money by narco-trafficking. The Panamanian government has relied on the Darien Gap to keep drugs and drug-related violence from spilling across their border.
We've been on the road for about 4 hours now, and this is our 4th checkpoint.
In addition to being a barrier against drugs and violence, the Darien also keeps South American diseases from moving into Central America.
Antes se llamaba COFA. COFA era Comisión Panamá-Estados Unidos para la Prevención de la Fiebre Aftosa.
He said that foot and mouth disease, that's never been a problem here in Panama. The reason that they're researching it is because we're on the border of Colombia. Up until about a year ago, Colombia had that problem for 50, 60 years. They were recently able to shake it, and now it's actually changed. The Commission of Panama and the United States for the eradication and prevention of screwworm, which is the biggest worry right now. And it's transferred through the bite of a mosquito, and it works its way into your body and just eats away at you.
We eventually arrived to our hotel. Let's just say that down in these areas, you won't be finding the comfort of a 5-star resort.
This is Mitch's room, and he just found a huge cockroach up in the bathroom. And just before this, like, the first thing to greet me in my room was a spider about the size of a walnut. It's about to get really dark. I'm kind of scared. You might catch me sleeping in the car.
Like I mentioned before, deforestation is also an issue.
We're a little further down in the Darien, getting a little closer to where the road ends. And as we've been driving down, we noticed this area, which is one of the places where they're bringing the trees that they're chopping down from the forest. These tree trunks are just enormous. ¿No se sienten mal que de pronto la selva se está haciendo más pequeña?
No sé, pero ya sabe que aquí la gente, Panamá es pobre. Y uno tiene que comer todos los días. Uno que tiene familia, y si no trabaja, ¿con qué va a mantener la familia? Mueren de hambre.
Y para trabajar en esta área, estos son uno de los mejores trabajos que pueden conseguir las personas.
Sí, de más dinero, más rápido.
In Spanish, the Darien Gap is actually called El Tapón del Darien, which means the stopper, the Darien stopper, which, you know, helps to stop a lot of different things from diseases, migrants, drug traffickers. And one comment that someone had mentioned earlier that I found funny is that they're starting to call it La Tapita del Darién, which is the small stopper, because, you know, little by little, it could disappear. We're on the last stretch of the Pan American Highway before we reach Yavisa, which is the last town before it's pure forest. These guys are actually trying to pave this, which would serve well for that community, but it also makes it easier for them to come into the forest and chop more trees down.
Studies in the Amazon have shown that 90% of deforestation occurs within 30 miles of a road. And the better the roads, the worse the destruction of the forest. But even though the government of Panama is paving the Pan American Highway where it presently ends in the town of Yavisa, there are no plans to extend the road across the Darien Gap.
This is it. This is Yavisa. This is the end of the Pan American Highway.
Here we met Jose, a government veterinarian whose job is to track diseases coming northward. He agreed to show us the jungle beyond the end of the highway.
Where is it?
In there, right there in those cages.
All right.
In here, they've got what they call in Spanish conejo pintado, which is the painted rabbit, but it's actually a large rodent that almost looks like a fat rat, and they actually eat it. This is what they hunt in the Darien for dinner. Mitch says he tried one, says it tastes like pork. I wouldn't dare try one. They look like giant rats to me. This is essentially it. You're seeing it right here. This is the 50 miles that keeps South America from coming into Central America. Some of them are hundreds of years old, and we're just losing them all. I mean, this is basically like the cemetery of the Darien.
We were on the second day of our journey through Panama. After hours of driving down the Pan American Highway, we reached Yavisa, the last town at the end of the road. There we met Jose, a government veterinarian who tracks diseases coming through the forests of the Darien Gap. He agreed to take us beyond the end of the highway and into this lawless jungle.
We're actually having the police escort us because, according to them, there is a lot of guerrilla activity over on that end. So I'm pretty happy to have them with us.
Let's go.
Sí se han volteado, bueno, no ha pasado nada por ahora, algunos pequeños accidentes.
He said they have tipped over in the past. I do not want to fall in this water at all. As we're riding along here, you see there are houses along the river. The people that actually live in these homes, most of them, they either raise pigs or they plant plantains and all sorts of different types of vegetables. So basically the situation that we've got here when it comes to the guerrillas, for the most part, the reason they come here is because they're trying to rest. They come here to party, basically, and they stay kind of incognito for the most part. They'll go to the stores and shop for food and just kind of hang out and lay low.
Guerrillas and narco-traffickers come to the jungles of the Darien to hide out, but they can't move large loads of drugs across it. And that's why it's called the stopper. Narcotics leaving Colombia for the U.S. first go by sea, either in freighters, fishing trawlers, or go-fast boats, and head up to Central America or southern Mexico, and then cross by land from Mexico to the U.S.
Yeah.
Jose took us into El Real, a town with a population of 500. Here we could see how cut off the Darien is. Not a lot of activity or commerce is passing through these areas.
They think this is like local. They think they're actually going to come out and somewhere in Panama. ¿Cuántos años tienes?
Yo,
Ajá.
8.
8. ¿Y tú?
10.
10. ¿Y les gusta vivir aquí? ¿Te gusta el Real? ¿Sí? ¿Por qué? ¿Por qué te gusta?
Está bonito.
Está bonito.
El Real doesn't look like a place touched by the narco-trafficking business. It seems to have a different kind of main industry.
Here's another one of these cockfighting rings. He's saying that this is a very popular sport in this area. I guess those are the stands. People hang out right here and watch the bloody mess. You can see the feathers. ¿Cómo le gusta vivir aquí en el Real?
Tranquilo.
That's basically his job here. I asked him what he does for a living. He said he takes care of the roosters for the sport.
Well, it's one person that's not smuggling drugs or cutting down trees.
Hasta luego.
As we continued on our journey, I got a little more curious about the forest. Why is it so easy for guerrillas to hide out here? And why is it so hard to penetrate?
Give us 5 minutes. Okay, I asked them to pull over the canoe because I just wanted to demonstrate these areas that are just, I mean, it's just sheer thickness. I mean, and another thing about walking through here is just the proof for you to see how this is just a natural, a buffer. The officer said that really we're only safe about 100 meters in from the river. They're spread out, they're really eyeing the area to make sure there's nothing happening. He's got his finger on the trigger right now and they have the guns out in case anything happens.
How big is that?
I'd say it's about 3 inches. One of the reasons you want to be careful while walking through here.
Oh, he's bigger.
That one's about 4 inches. They're everywhere. Oh, he's saying that at nighttime, there's some spiders that come out that are the size of his hand. I think they're tarantulas. I mean, if you come here and take a look, it starts to get really thick. Now, I'm wearing shorts, so I mean, it would be really difficult. Obviously, even if I wasn't wearing shorts, we'd need a machete to get through this area. So the deeper you get, the thicker it is, the thicker it becomes. This is essentially it. You're seeing it right here. You see why the Panamanian government wouldn't want to build a road. I mean, this is like the 50 miles that keeps South America from coming into Central America. This is right here, the barrier between 2 continents. We've just entered the Kuna Indians zone. It's beautiful. It's good. Beautiful here.
This is what your room cost.
$15, people.
This is what my room cost because I didn't have air conditioning.
Mitch, you got a discount? $10?
Because I didn't have air conditioning. The room leaked.
Are you kidding me? Darn it. Got $5 off?
Yeah.
You owe me.
It'd been 2 days since our arrival in Panama. We'd driven south on the Pan American Highway until the road had abruptly ended. And there, we found the Darien Gap. We'd gotten a pretty close look at why this dangerous jungle is so unique. But now, we wanted to go even deeper.
We're at our third day in the Darien, and I'm getting kind of tired of these bumpy roads, but we're actually following a Panamanian activist right now who's taking us to one of the villages where the indigenous people live, one of the Indian groups that are actually right now working with her on a project for preservation of the forest.
The activist we were following is named Rosario. Originally, her organization was backed by the U.S. Agency for International Development, USAID.
So we had to head out of our van. It's getting a little bumpy, and the van's actually a bit too low for this road. So we have to hop into Rosario's pickup truck right here.
The indigenous preserve that Rosario was taking us to belonged to the Kuna people. One of them came along to guide us. The land that we were driving through used to be forest, but the trees had been cut down and now it's used for cattle ranching, which along with soybean farming is the main use of land that has been deforested in Latin America.
We just pulled over at the side of the road to let this truck pass. If you take a look and see, they've got some very large tree trunks passing by us that they're taking out of the forest.
Hasta aquí.
Coqueño was just telling me that we've just entered the Kuna Indians zone. That right there were the limits. After that, they can't touch the land. And it's already, the forest is much more dense, much thicker terrain.
One main hope for preserving the forests of the Darien is that indigenous people, such as the Kuna, will protect the trees on their land.
It's beautiful. It's beautiful here.
But the struggle with poverty can tempt even the Kuna to invite loggers into their forest. At times, they'll allow a limited number of trees to be cut in order to make money for the tribe.
This here is actually mahogany wood, which is one of the most precious types. ¿No sabes cuál país compra más de la madera de Panamá?
Estados Unidos. Está comprando muchos pisos de parquet. Para piso, lo que llaman parquet, para hacer pisos de madera.
I'm in front of a quibo tree. These are one of the only indigenous trees that don't get cut down because they're too fibrous. They have too much water in them. They're not good for furniture or anything like that. So we're getting there already soon.
3 hours and 15 minutes.
3 hours and 15 minutes later, we're getting there soon.
Bueno, ¿cómo estamos?
¿Cómo estás?
Bien, me alegro.
I don't know if you guys noticed the guy that just walked by. He was albino, and this community has one of the highest percentages of albinos in the world because they don't mix with other people outside of their community. ¿Hablan español? Sí. ¿Todos?
Because most of the villagers spoke only Kuna, not Spanish, it was a little tough to make friends.
Made the baby cry.
I was asking him if they go to school, and he said that he's been to school 8 days and 3 years. Gavin's one of the diplomats from the U.S. Embassy, and he's giving out pins, and these kids are just swarming around him. Estamos unidos. We are united. It's got the American and Panamanian flag. Oh, Teresa's going to show us his house. So one of the little boys agreed to show me his home. ¿Dónde duermes? ¿Dónde duermes?
Arriba.
No bebe. ¿Acaso bebe?
Oh, okay. Perdona. All right, I guess you just got kicked out. ¿Cuántas personas viven en la casa?
Aquí, como vive 10.
¿10?
10, sí.
Yeah. ¿Ustedes miran televisión? ¿Sí? ¿Dónde tienen televisión? ¿Cuántas hay aquí? Televisores.
3, 4, 5.
Estaba preguntando que si cuando crezca si quiere quedarse aquí o ir a la ciudad.
저희도 우리 배말 둥구 스티반의 웹 배구지 구비 속에 바나마의 배구지 구비말. 나이 바나마. 야 배말 구지 구비. 바나마 할래.
And that's the dilemma that the Kuna face in preserving the forest. Most of their people prefer the Western lifestyle that they see in the rest of Panama, but with few skills, including the ability to speak Spanish, they have few ways to pay for it. We were invited into what the Kuna call their House of Congress.
These are the chiefs of the town. They said one of their biggest problems is the poverty.
Se preocupan por la selva y los árboles.
Aproximadamente la superficie de 77.500 hectáreas donde nosotros ubicamos.
Esa es una de las soluciones inmediatas.
Exacto.
He's saying that ultimately, yes, this is a worry of theirs because in their culture, the way they grew up, they believe that the forest, nature, and the rivers are part of their family. But because of these problems, one of the immediate solutions for them, as we saw on the way in, he mentioned there are people out there cutting the trees and selling the wood.
This is Mauricio Castaño. This is the first chief.
Everyone made the same points. The Kuna are impoverished and want help establishing schools and medical care.
Hey, chao,
Chao, hasta luego. So we just drove out and we just noticed another lumber yard on the way out. Rosario was telling me that some of these trees they're no less than 60 years old. Some of them are hundreds of years old, and we're just losing them all. I mean, this is basically like the cemetery of the Darien.
The end of our trip to the Darien wasn't the end of our trip to Panama. I wanted to get one last look at Panama City and its stark contrast to the rest of the country. Panama City has a building boom that law enforcement suspect is partly due to the laundering of money from the narcotics that go through it on their way to the US. And in addition to the fact that the country's shrinking wilderness is threatening its role as a buffer, the depletion of the forest may have even farther-reaching consequences. Our last stop was the Panama Canal, a link between the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans.
Annually, we're handling 18% of the U.S. commerce.
18%?
Yes. Most of the cargo that goes through the Panama Canal is coming or going to U.S. ports.
Can you tell us how much water it takes to run this type of transport?
Yes. In the locks, we have 65 million gallons of fresh water.
Now, do the surrounding forests contribute to that?
Definitely. And as long as we maintain the forest, we guarantee the water to operate the canal.
So yes, the story of Panama is a complicated one. And it was clear to me when I left that this wasn't just another story about preserving a forest, but also about the people, the country, and maybe even the 2 continents that rely on it.
See more Vanguard Wednesdays at 10 p.m. on Current or online at current.com/Vanguard.